The story behind Blazing Saddles is filled with secrets and moments that almost changed movie history forever. On the set, strange things happen that few people talk about today. The actor originally cast as the Waco Kid walked away after just one day of filming. What he did 4 years later would leave a shadow over Hollywood. Even John Wayne, the biggest cowboy star of all time, read the script and gave a short reply of only 3 words that changed how the project moved forward. The original title of the movie was connected to Malcolm X, but Warner Brothers quickly buried that idea. And even the governor's name in the film hides a coded reference that only people familiar with French history would recognize. These are not just small bits of trivia. These are secrets that were almost lost for 50 years. It all began with a young writer named Andrew Bergman, who had the bold idea of making a comedy about a black sheriff in a white western town. His first title for the film was Tex-X, a direct nod to Malcolm X. It wasn't just a joke. It was meant as a cultural statement, flipping the entire cowboy myth on its head. For a major studio to even consider a script like that in the early 1970s was shocking. Movies at the time rarely dealt with race in such a blunt and funny way, especially not in the Western genre. The Tex-X name was dropped, but that raw energy stayed in the final version of Blazing Saddles. Before Mel Brooks became involved, the film almost went down a very different path. Alan Arkin was first set to direct, and James Earl Jones, years before voicing Darth Vader, was lined up to play the sheriff. Jones had incredible presence and power, but he wasn't known for comedy. Still, it could have worked. But the project fell apart. The script was considered too wild, too controversial, and the studio got nervous. For a while it was abandoned. It only came back to life when Mel Brooks stepped in. He didn't soften the story. He made it even bolder. Without that failure, the version of Blazing Saddles we know today would never have been made. At the time, Brooks himself was struggling. His film The Producers had won him an Oscar, but it hadn't made much money. His next project, The 12 Chairs, flopped badly. He was broke. He had a baby on the way with Anne Bancroft, and he was close to giving up and returning to television work. When he was offered Tex-X, he didn't grab it because he was confident. It was pure desperation. Later, Brooks admitted that Blazing Saddles saved his career and his life. Writing the film was absolute chaos. Brooks didn't do it alone. He brought in 4 other writers: Andrew Bergman, Richard Pryor, Norman Steinberg, and Alan Unger. Their writing sessions were more like fistfights than brainstorming. They argued, shouted, and fought over every line. Nights stretched on with piles of Chinese food cartons and endless coffee. The first draft of the script was over 400 pages long, enough for an 8-hour film. They managed to cut it down, but even then, it was massive and overflowing with bold, rule-breaking jokes. One of the rules in the writing room was posted on the wall: "Please do not write a polite script." That single line gave everyone permission to go as far as they could. Nothing was off-limits. They made fun of racism, mocked Hollywood traditions, and turned the entire Western genre upside down. Writers didn't stick to stereotypes. Richard Pryor wrote Jewish jokes, while the Jewish writers wrote black jokes. That mix of voices gave the movie its fearless, one-of-a-kind style. Richard Pryor was originally supposed to play Sheriff Bart himself. Brooks fought hard for him, but the studio refused. They argued that Pryor's history with drugs and a recent arrest made him uninsurable. Brooks was furious, ready to walk away from the project, but Pryor calmed him down. Instead of fighting, he told Brooks, "We'll find the right guy." Richard Pryor didn't get the role of Sheriff Bart, but he didn't walk away either. Instead, he joined the writing team and helped shape the film's fearless voice. His humor and sharp edge left fingerprints all over the script, even though he wasn't the one in front of the camera. Cleavon Little was cast as the sheriff, and Brooks later admitted they got lucky. Little had the charm, timing, and presence that made the character shine. Still, it's hard not to imagine what the film would have looked like if Pryor had starred, especially since just 2 years later, he and Gene Wilder would form one of the most iconic comedy duos of all time. Casting the Waco Kid was another wild story. Mel Brooks had a shocking idea. He wanted John Wayne to play the role. The biggest cowboy star of all time, famous for playing rugged, straight-laced heroes, was asked to star as a drunken, washed-up gunfighter in a movie that mocked the very genre he helped define. Wayne read the script overnight and told Brooks he laughed harder than he had in years. But he turned it down. He said it was too dirty for his image, though he promised to be the first in line to see it. Just picture it. John Wayne, the symbol of classic Hollywood westerns, staggering around as a broken-down drunk in a movie tearing westerns apart. It didn't happen, but it almost did. After Wayne said no, Brooks chased another surprising choice. Dan Dailey, an actor known for musicals, not westerns. But Dailey could ride a horse better than anyone, and Brooks thought he'd be perfect. He even tracked him down in Hawaii. Dailey loved the script but turned it down too. His eyesight was failing, and he admitted he was almost blind. Brooks was crushed, but he didn't give up. Then came the biggest casting disaster of all. Brooks hired Gig Young, an Oscar-winning actor who looked perfect for the weary, broken-down Waco Kid. But Young's personal life was a mess. He had a severe drinking problem. On the very first day of filming, while shooting the jail cell scene, Young began shaking uncontrollably. Brooks thought he was acting until Young suddenly vomited green bile. He was rushed to the hospital, and Brooks later said, "If you want an alcoholic, don't cast an alcoholic." Young never returned, and he eventually sued Warner Brothers. Once again, the role of the Waco Kid was empty. That's when Gene Wilder entered the picture. At first, Brooks hadn't considered him. He thought Wilder was too young and too clean-cut. In fact, Brooks had originally offered him the villain role, which Wilder had turned down. But now, desperate, Brooks called him in tears. Wilder had just finished working with Brooks on The Producers, so he got on a plane to Los Angeles immediately. When he tried on the Waco Kid's costume, it fit perfectly, almost like it was waiting for him. By Monday he was on set. His calm, quirky timing and warm chemistry with Cleavon Little became the heart of the movie. Out of chaos and failed casting attempts, Wilder ended up saving the film. But even after the cast was set and filming wrapped, the battle wasn't over. When Mel Brooks first screened Blazing Saddles for Warner Brothers executives, the room was ice cold. The film was filled with fart jokes, slapstick violence, and constant racial humor, including heavy use of the N-word. Instead of laughter, the executives were stunned into silence. Some were offended, others outraged. Leo Greenfield, head of domestic distribution, flat out said they should bury the movie and take the financial loss. The rest of the executives agreed. They handed Brooks a list of cuts: remove the campfire fart scene, delete the horse punching, strip out the slurs. Brooks nodded politely, took the list, left the room, then crumpled it up and threw it away. He wasn't changing a thing. Instead, Brooks gambled on the audience. He arranged a second screening, not for the studio, but for the secretaries, janitors, and mailroom workers. This time the reaction was completely different. From the first gag, the room exploded with laughter. People were gasping for air, some even rolling on the floor. Norman Steinberg, one of the co-writers, said it was the most chaotic, joyous screening he'd ever seen. Brooks turned to his team and whispered, "Fellas, this is our film." That reaction forced the studio to reconsider. Even then, Warner Brothers didn't trust the movie. They refused to give it a wide release and instead opened it quietly in just 3 cities: New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. No big advertising push, no critics' previews, just a test to see if anyone would even watch it. To their shock, the theaters were packed. Word of mouth spread fast, and audiences couldn't get enough. People laughed so hard that lines formed around the block. Soon, suburban theaters were selling out too, proving that the humor wasn't just for big city crowds. Critics were split. Some praised it as brilliant satire, while others called it crude and offensive. But audiences didn't care. By spring of 1974, Blazing Saddles had gone nationwide, and it was unstoppable. The film cost just $2.6 million to make but earned nearly $120 million in North America alone, becoming the #1 movie of 1974. Adjusted for inflation, it made nearly $600 million, putting it ahead of many modern blockbusters. About 63 million people saw it in theaters, more than any single Lord of the Rings movie decades later. The film had broken every rule, mocked Hollywood itself, and done it with outrageous humor that no one thought would ever make it past the censors. Mel Brooks trusted his instincts, defied the executives, and changed comedy forever. Madeline Kahn's audition for the role of Lily von Stupp started off in a way that nearly made her walk out. When Mel Brooks asked to see her legs, she froze. She thought it was that kind of audition, the kind women are taught to avoid. But Brooks quickly explained himself. He wasn't being inappropriate. He was checking to see if her legs could pull off the look of a glamorous, sultry saloon singer. Once she understood, she relaxed, but the misunderstanding almost cost her the role. Kahn leaned fully into the part once she got it, and her performance became unforgettable. She combined over-the-top sexuality with goofy awkwardness, turning Lily into both a parody of the classic femme fatale and a lovable, hilarious mess. Her number, I'm Tired, was written as a raunchy cabaret parody, but Kahn delivered it with such comic genius that it became one of the highlights of the film. She managed to be sexy, clumsy, and self-aware all at once. That balance was pure Kahn. She never played a role straight. She always added a twist that made it unique. Off-screen, Brooks adored working with her. He later said she was one of the funniest performers he had ever directed, because she knew how to play a joke without ever pushing too hard. She trusted silence, hesitation, and awkward pauses just as much as punchlines. That subtle timing made her stand out in a film packed with big, outrageous gags. Her performance didn't just get laughs, it got recognition. Kahn was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her role in Blazing Saddles. Few comedies earn that kind of attention from the Academy, but her work was undeniable. She turned what could have been a throwaway parody role into something iconic. It's worth noting that Kahn and Brooks had a long creative relationship. She later worked with him again in Young Frankenstein and History of the World. Part 1, proving she wasn't just a one-hit wonder in his films. She was a true muse for his wild style of comedy. Her audition story may have started awkwardly, but by the time Blazing Saddles premiered, there was no doubt. Kahn wasn't just right for the part, she elevated it. She became one of the film's brightest sparks, and her performance is still remembered today as one of the best examples of how parody can be both ridiculous and brilliant at the same time. She snapped, thinking the audition had crossed the line, but Mel Brooks quickly explained that he wasn't being inappropriate. He needed to know if she could pull off a dramatic chair straddle like Marlene Dietrich in Destry Rides Again. Once she understood, Madeline Kahn grabbed a chair, lifted her skirt, nailed the pose, and won the role of Lily von Stupp instantly. Her confidence, comic timing, and boldness convinced Brooks she was perfect. That moment not only earned her the part but also led to an Oscar nomination, turning her into one of the film's standout stars. Kahn wasn't done proving herself. Right after the audition, she cheekily lifted her skirt again and joked, "No touching." It wasn't scripted, it just slipped out, but it captured exactly the kind of humor the film was built on. That unscripted moment set the tone for Lily's character, mixing charm, parody, and wit. Brooks later admitted that this was the instant he knew no one else could play Lily the way she did. Her fearless energy shaped one of the most unforgettable characters in comedy history. But the story of Blazing Saddles wasn't just about great performances. It was also about taking risks. Richard Pryor, one of the writers, pushed Mel Brooks to go further than he thought possible. Brooks was nervous about using the N-word so many times in the script. He feared audiences would walk out or the studio would cancel everything. But Pryor was firm. If they wanted to mock racism, they had to show it honestly, with the real language racists used. Softening it would make the satire meaningless. Pryor told Brooks directly, "We are writing a story about racial prejudice." His courage gave the film its raw edge. When Pryor couldn't star in the film, he didn't leave bitterly. Instead, he helped choose his replacement. He pushed for Cleavon Little, saying his presence would terrify the townspeople in exactly the way the satire needed. Little's smooth confidence turned the role of the black sheriff into comedy gold, and the movie wouldn't have worked without him. Pryor's influence was everywhere in the script and casting. Behind the scenes, the chaos didn't stop there. Gig Young, the Oscar-winning actor originally cast as the Waco Kid, showed up for his first day of filming and collapsed. Years of alcoholism caught up to him, and he became violently sick during a scene. Brooks had no choice but to fire him, even though it caused legal trouble. Young later sued Warner Brothers for breach of contract, but he lost. Sadly, his story had a darker end. In 1978, he killed his wife and himself, leaving behind a disturbing legacy that forever tied him to tragedy. Brooks quickly replaced him with Gene Wilder, who flew in last minute and ended up delivering one of the funniest performances of his career. And then there was the lawsuit from actress Hedy Lamarr. The villain's name in the movie was Hedy Lamarr, an obvious joke based on her name. Lamarr didn't laugh. She sued Warner Brothers and Brooks for $10 million, claiming it was offensive and unauthorized. The movie even referenced the lawsuit in a joke, but she wasn't amused. Brooks admired her and didn't want a long fight, so he settled quietly. The amount was never revealed, but it added yet another scandal to the film's long list of controversies. Despite all the lawsuits, chaos, and backlash, Blazing Saddles made history. In 2000, the American Film Institute ranked it number 6 on its 100 Years, 100 Laughs list, beating dozens of other comedy classics. In 2006, the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry, alongside iconic films like Rocky and Fargo. It was proof that the film wasn't just outrageous, it was important. But even decades later, it still sparks debate. In 2020, HBO Max added a 3-minute disclaimer before the film, featuring a scholar explaining the racist language and stereotypes. The message said the film mocked racism instead of promoting it, but audiences were divided. Some praised the context, while others thought it ruined the fun. Only 2 movies on the platform got that kind of warning: Gone with the Wind and Blazing Saddles. That says everything about the impact and controversy it still carries. Mel Brooks himself predicted this year's earlier. In a 2017 interview he said, "Political correctness is the death of comedy." He believed a movie like Blazing Saddles couldn't be made today. Studios wouldn't take the risk, and audiences would explode in outrage. For Brooks, comedy wasn't about being offensive for no reason. It was about tackling the uncomfortable truths people were afraid to face. He believed laughter could disarm hate more effectively than anything else. That fearless approach is what made Blazing Saddles both shocking and timeless, a comedy that broke every rule and left audiences laughing through their discomfort.